I want to thank you all for being here this afternoon. It's so great to see so many of our business partners here. Many of you I've seen, but some of you I haven't seen recently, so thank you for being here. If you don't know me, I am Claire Verity. I'm the market president for Regence BlueShield here in Washington. Today's conversation, hopefully you're at the right place. Today's conversation, I always like that when you get on a plane and they say, we're going so-and-so place, and hopefully you're on the right plane. No, but we are here today to have the conversation around solutions for the workplace wellness, well-being, and mental health of our employees. Just for a raise of hands, I'm just kind of curious, how many of you came to last year's conversation on the employee workforce, mental health that we sponsored? Have many of you came to that? Okay, some of you did. Well, we have been convening many conversations over the last few years on, focused really on destigmatizing mental health, creating access, and addressing health inequities. Those still remain. Those are not gone, but we still want to think about things in the future. So today, we wanted to convene the conversation around solutions. So I'm particularly proud of Regence BlueShield as the convener to host these conversations around mental health and well-being of employees. Certainly, our world has changed, our needs have changed, so we need to figure out how do we innovate and evolve. That's why Regence, we felt that it was important to host this conversation focused again on solutions, alongside some of Washington's brightest business leaders and with the partnership of the Puget Sound Business Journal. We're really going to focus on how our local businesses or business leaders innovating to meet the needs of employees. That's why you'll get to hear today from the panel discussion. We want to get really deeper into some of those conversations about what's working. We were just having a side conversation. I'm hoping those will come up today on some of those innovative ideas that the panel will share with you. So again, the panel, I hope, will be sharing some really informative information and actionable information to support your own professional and personal networks. We will follow up certainly after this event with some added detail around the conversation today, so expect some more after today. But I'm going to be very brief because there are a lot more people that need to come up on stage. So on behalf of Regence BlueShield, thank you all for being here, but especially thank you for the gift of your time and the gift of your conversation today. So I would like to bring up Don Baker, the publisher of the Puget Sound Business Journal, who will be introducing our panelists today. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Claire, and thank you to Regence for the partnership for this event. We appreciate doing this again this year. It's a very important topic. As she said, I'm Don Baker. I'm the president and publisher of the Puget Sound Business Journal, and I'll be leading our conversation today. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to invite our panelists to come up and join us on the stage here. So as I introduce you, please go ahead and come on up and take your seat. First to the stage is Deanna Dawson, CEO of the Association of Washington Cities. Welcome, Deanna. Next to the stage is Adrian Hanauer, owner of the Seattle Sounders. Please welcome Adrian to the stage. Next, we have Dr. Donna Milovitz, Chief Medical Officer and Senior Vice President for Regence Health Plans. Please welcome Dr. Milovitz to the stage as well. And continuing in alphabetical order, we have Loria Yaden, President and CEO of the YMCA of Greater Seattle. Please welcome Loria to the stage as well. And thank you again to each of you for joining us today and sharing your expertise and insights into what is a very important topic. We'll go ahead and get started. While it may feel like the pandemic is behind us, with Amazon and Starbucks employees back in the office 3 days a week, the federal COVID-19 public health emergency expiring earlier this month, At the same time, data shows employee burnout remains high, and the mental health crisis continues to grow. So we have a kind of a multi-part question to address some of that to kick things off. So when it comes to addressing workplace mental health, what are we doing well, and where do we still have a long way to go? And with that, can you share innovations and creative ideas that you've seen in your field or organization or among your customers that have helped address employee well-being and mental health? Dr. Milovitz, would you like to go first on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you all for being here today to address this really important discussion on mental health. It really is a big deal. I don't think I need to say that to all of you. And as we emerge from the pandemic, we really are solidly in the middle of a mental health crisis. So when we think about our workforce, they're depressed, they're anxious, they are really burnt out. 46% of employees, as an example, say that they're stressed out at work. So we're really at this inflection point as employers and in managing sort of employees in our communities that we serve. So as we emerge into this new world called the hybrid workplace, what are we doing? What is Regence doing as an example? And Regence really wears two hats. One, we wear an employer hat, and number two, we wear a health plan hat. So I'm going to talk a little bit about solutions in both of those scenarios. So as an employer, I would say that before we can even start to talk about solutioning, we really need to talk about the elephant in the room, which is stigma. And if as an employer we are not addressing stigma in the workplace around mental health, we've already lost. So what are we doing about stigma in the workplace at Regence? We stood up, as an example, an Emotional Intelligence 101 course, which seems kind of basic, but 35% of our workforce actually signed up for this course. It was a multi-week sort of check-in, and the majority of our employees did it to fruition, which was a really important indicator for us that our employees are really craving information on how to talk to each other and to destigmatize conversations so that they could get down to the work of doing work. From that, employees volunteered to share some of their stories within our workforce. Vulnerable individuals, very sort of real examples of some struggles in the workplace that they were dealing with. And what it did was it created an environment for us of trust and vulnerability that we then could sit down together and start doing work together, sort of finding common ground. Those are examples from what we did as an employer. Sort of pivoting to health plan, our members are also our employees, number one, but we also serve our health plan members. And the tip of the spear for us is really access. It still is access. We have a mismatch with supply and demand in terms of not enough mental health providers for the demand that's out there. So we've made a concerted effort over the last 2 years to really lean into that, both in the in-person as well as the virtual space, with which about 50% of our health plan members actually access virtual mental health services. In 2022, as an example, we added about 1,600 net new providers, with 500 of them being here in Washington, because as I don't have to share with all of you, we are a big need state here. In addition to access, we really have the additional barriers, though, of members really not understanding what their benefits are. So it's great to increase access, but if you don't have awareness, we've got a really big challenge. So how are we working and solutioning with our customers, our employer groups, many of you in the room today, on how to increase awareness? And by the way, at Regence, for an example, we don't really actually need a primary care referral to get to a behavioral health specialist. We thought that was really important to do to take away that barrier. So From an employer standpoint, increasing awareness is having webinars, meeting with HR representatives, making sure that we are having a direct to sort of consumer marketing campaign digitally, as well as through sort of just point solutions of talking to individuals and groups to make sure that we're increasing awareness, as an example. Additionally, we need to make sure that we have our members being able to see providers that fit for them. So culturally sort of appropriate fits. So from a provider search standpoint, we've increased that from a demographic standpoint to really help our members see people that they feel comfortable in seeing. Those are just some examples of what we're doing at Regence.
Thank you. Some other thoughts? What's working well? What are some areas of opportunities to make some adjustments?
So I'll add on. Hi, everybody. Loria Yaten. It's good to see all of you. But first, I want to go back to what I think you said very well and just embellish. Yes, the public health crisis has expired, but the mental health crisis, the physical health crisis is still among us. And my theory is, based upon what I'm seeing in community, it has not yet peaked. It's still escalating. So even if we feel like we're making some progress now, we always have to up our game because there's more coming. And we see that not just among our staff, but we see that also among the community members who walk in and out of our buildings every day. We see this continued craving for work-life balance, but people acknowledge it's a farce. And I think we're able to say it out loud now. I know earlier in my career, people would use that terminology, and my response was, just give me the flexibility to manage my life. Okay, and be real about it and not have to apologize if I'm having to send an email at 10 p.m. because that's what I need to do in order to be at my daughter's school midday when she has a volleyball game. And that's what brought me joy. That's what brought me happiness. So realizing that we have this flexibility now and work and life are intertwined, accepting that, but giving people the opportunity to have the flexibility to manage. That's a huge strategy for us. We allow people to come to the workplace to be who they are, to embrace them, to celebrate life, the good and the bad, all of it with them, and ensure that they feel seen, affirmed when they come into the workplace. Ironically, it's exactly what the Y strives to be for the communities we serve. We work hard every day to be a welcoming place of belonging, where everybody feels seen, they feel affirmed, and they know that they're in a space where they can learn and grow. And we have doubled down on doing that in an even bigger way for our staff. We have to make more progress in this area. The reality is an entity like the Y, and I see some of my nonprofit colleagues in the room who I hope will pound the table and nod with me on this. We're still in a place where we are recovering from what has been some of the most traumatic operational times that I've ever seen. And I've been in business for a long time before I came into the nonprofit sector. And it's really difficult. And so we don't have at our disposal the ability to throw money at it, to make huge investments. So we've had to get back to the basics and ask ourselves, how do we show up for each other? How do we as leaders role model that for our staff? How do we treat our staff with empathy, compassion, listen empathetically beneath the words, learn, and then lean into what they're saying to us, and then respond accordingly within the constraints of what we are able to do. We do it together. We take care of each other together. Just like we show up in our facilities where community cares for community. So those are some thoughts.
Thank you. Deanna, Adrian, any thoughts you'd like to share?
Go ahead. Thanks, Adrian. I'll jump in for a moment. And like some of you, we wear a lot of hats at AWC. So we're an employer, but we also represent all 281 cities in Washington state. And so we're working day to day with all the elected officials across the state of Washington and dealing with their needs. We also have the Employee Benefit Trust at AWC. And so we have members of 200 cities and towns and other government agencies that we are providing healthcare benefits to through that pool. It's the largest pool in the state. And so we're doing things on a variety of fronts. But one of the things I can say for sure as I look out is that our city officials, both elected officials and staff, like many of your employees, are going through this huge time of burnout. This was really an unprecedented event that we had during this pandemic. And as everyone has been acknowledging here, the after effects are not over. And I think the other thing that we need to acknowledge is that it was also an extraordinarily stressful couple of years because we had this huge racial reckoning over the last few years. And that has really brought into focus the need to look at things in different ways in our communities. And so this has put all sorts of pressures on the elected officials that we're working with. And so I think we need to be dealing with those needs that they have. We've had a real focus since I joined AWC in the last year on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Because as everyone's been talking about here, if we can't show up to our jobs, either employees in the public sector or as elected officials and be our authentic selves and engage on that level, then we can't do our jobs well. And it puts that other layer of stress onto us. And so I think that's just a huge thing that we've been really focused on. And I know that many of us on this panel have been focused on over the last couple of years, because we do need to address that burnout. And I think you asked the question about, are we back to normal because we're going back in person? In the public sector, not everybody is going back in person all the time. And I think that's a stressful thing too, though, right? Like doing virtual things is one thing, but then and doing in-person things is one thing, but trying to do both is a huge stressor, right? And so we're back in person and we have to do all these in-person meetings, but we didn't stop doing all the Zoom meetings that we set up during those years. We're super overscheduled. We forget to schedule ourselves for lunch. We forget to schedule bathroom breaks in sometimes. Have anybody experienced that situation where, yes, right? And so I think that's another thing that we as leaders can do is to give people the permission to say, hey, you don't have to be overscheduled like this. And we need to sometimes lead by example. And sometimes it is okay to say, we're gonna send that email at 10 o'clock because that's our time, but we also need to let our employees know it's okay not to respond to that email when I send it at 10 o'clock at night, and you need to put your phone down when it's not work time. We've decided that it's okay to stay home on sick days, right? Because that's something we used to not do, right? We used to show up when we were sick as a dog, and that was something we took pride in. But now I think we all realize we can't do that. But I think I see people saying, oh yeah, I've got COVID, but I'm still here on this Zoom meeting. Like, if you're not okay, you should be able to take a sick day. You should be able to take a mental health day too, because mental health is health and is wellness. And so I think we need to set that example and send that message out to all our employees that these things are okay. And having events like this, as people have said already, that destigmatize and demystify what's going on with mental health. We have been for 35 years at AWC partnering with the public sector and the private sector to do a Healthy Worksite Summit, which Regence has been a great partner with us on, but just to bring people together. And our focus this year has been around that mental health because we know we need to demystify it. And then I think I just need to call out who we have on this stage here today is so exciting, both because we have such a diversity of opinion and diversity of experience up here, but also the things that we all do are the things that are going to help folks get through this crisis of mental health, right? We've got outdoor education, right? And services for children. We've got healthcare. We've got sports, right? Which is a huge part of how our mental health can be improved. We've got cities that provide parks and provide spaces for people to come together. We provide community, right? And so all of us working together, the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit center, that's how we're going to get through this. And so I'm just so grateful to be a part of this event today. Thank you, Dawn.
Oh, thank you, of course.
Okay, so I'll just add a couple of thoughts. I'm not sure I'm gonna, for sure during this session, I'm gonna learn more than I impart on anyone.
We
But
all will.
you know, for me, the thing that pre-pandemic, the pandemic brought into focus is just the responsibility and the requirement as leaders to be better and better listeners, empathetic listeners to the people that work in our organizations. And I think the one thing that we've done differently than pre-pandemic is really individualizing solutions. There's no one size fits all. There probably never was, but I think coming out of the pandemic for us, it is listening to what individuals need, because the needs of families are far different than the needs of single individuals. The needs of people living in the suburbs are different than people who are living walking distance from work. Various activities, time challenges. We just have to listen and respond to people individually. So, yeah.
Okay, perfect. I want to, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to kind of go and look a little bit more at some of the changes in benefits. So whether it's virtual therapy or employee assistance programs, organizations have increased their mental health benefits for employees. However, several national surveys, including from the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, show that utilization rates of these benefits are in the single digits, anywhere from 2% to 8%. So, multi-part question here again for you, but how do employers' mental health benefits impact employee well-being, and which benefits are most utilized or have the best positive impact? Additionally, then, can you just share what your organization is doing to increase the utilization of the benefits offered? And Deanna, would you like to kind of jump in on this one first?
Sure, happy to. And I think, one of the things that we can do when we talk about something like an EAP, an employee assistance plan, if this is just something that when your employees join your workforce, you get your HR person saying, and here's your benefits, you get an EAP, and that's the end of it. It's no wonder that we're at, single digit utilization. But if I were to come to you and tell you, hey, we've got this really cool, unique thing in our organization that we do, and we can give you free legal advice. So if you need to draft a will, you can get a free assistance with that. We can help you find care for your aging mother. We can help you find childcare options. We can help you find dog sitting options, right? We can get you mental health treatment. We can get you free substance abuse treatment. All these things are free, and this is a special sort of curated experience we can have for you to help you find things, to help you with all the stressors in your life. You would say, that's amazing. What, my employer's gonna do what for me? And they're gonna do it for free? That's awesome, right? And that's what EAP is. We just don't do a very good job of talking about those programs that we're already offering to people. And so I think we have had a long tradition at EWC with our Employee Benefits Trust of seeing the value in this. We have a board that is really bought into the idea that mental health and wellness is a top priority. And so this is something that we've been doing a great job on. We had, before the pandemic, utilization rates of our EAP that were in the 25 to 28% range. And post-pandemic in 2022, we were up to 36% utilization. So I think something that we're doing is right. And I think it really is about just talking about these things and understanding the value and not just messaging them to your employees when you first sign them up for work, but during the workday. We do all staff meetings, and I've been with our organization for less than a year. I think at least 3 of those staff meetings I've talked about mental health and about burnout and about the types of things that we can do in the workplace. I think if we as leaders are messaging those things, it destigmatizes it, but it helps people be aware of those things that maybe it doesn't click for you when you first are joining an organization, but maybe down the road it will click. And we have other options that are virtual options now. Like we have a great MD Live program with Regence that people are really taking advantage of. Our utilization with that has tripled during the pandemic. It's up to 18% now, which is a great number. We have really high resolution rates from these types of things as well. So it saves everybody time and money to be able to use them. People don't necessarily need to get other resources after them because they can solve their problems before they blow up into bigger problems, which is a win-win for everybody, right? Another innovation I think that we do through our Employee Benefit Trust at AWC is that we have a Well City program where we help our cities define wellness programs that work for them. And then we reward those cities that participate with a Well City discount of 2% on their rates. But we find that this is a win-win because it saves the cities money, but it also saves the pool money, right? Because we have lower medical claims costs for those well cities. We have lower hospitalizations. We have lower prescription drug costs. We have lower ER utilization and lower ER costs. So when you invest in employees and you make that a priority, it does pay off. It's a good business decision in addition to being the right thing to do. It really is a win-win.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. And I really like what you said, Deanna. And I'll expand on that to sort of drive home the point that I really think navigation is really, really critical. And awareness of benefits and about programs. And I will say that from a Regence standpoint, you know, if a member is calling in to customer service, we have the availability to sort of know what that member is eligible for and to help them navigate through sort of services, whether or not it's physical health or mental health services. The other key piece in this is that when a member is in crisis, as an example, and they're calling in for help because frequently one doesn't access their benefits until they need their benefits. Ironic, but that is the truth. And when you're calling in crisis and sort of having sort of that filter with our customer service team to be trained in behavioral health first aid, to sort of know those trigger words, to say this member really is in crisis. EAP may not be the right venue. I might need to call 988 for this member, right, as an example. But having that skill set to be able to navigate, I think is really, really critical in helping provide the services for what the acuity of their need is.
Yeah, good point.
Great. Gloria, Adrian, anything? What are you doing to increase utilization rates, and what are some of the things that have positive impacts?
Yeah, I'll the technical, I don't know the statistics on our adoption versus today, but I do know that one of the ways that we've gotten more adoption is in the ways we communicate. Me talking to someone in my organization about mental health benefits is very different than a peer or someone else who maybe is more appropriate to have that conversation. We also, and perhaps going back to the prior question, we have an interesting workforce, if you will. We have business people working on sales and marketing and communication issues, just like most companies do. We have athletes who are adults, who have families. We have athletes who are single, young. We have 13-year-olds who are part of our system in our youth system, and their mental health is obviously critical to us as well. And so, again, back to this idea of one size fits all, for us, it's impossible. It is all about having a broad range of solutions and delivering that information in multiple ways, from multiple angles, multiple times. Again, eliminating that stigma that perhaps a 13-year-old feels that an adult doesn't.
Gloria, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I agree with what my co-panelists have said. It's important that people are aware of what's available to them long before they need it. You know, I was thinking years ago, my daughter has a severe allergy to nuts. And so what do? We got an EpiPen. It's in our backpack. Everybody knows it's in the backpack. And we were at a volleyball tournament, and just before, somehow she came into contact with nuts. And all of a sudden, she's sweating profusely, and everybody's looking at each other on what to do. And they come to me, and I'm like, what do you mean? And then she can't breathe. She literally can't breathe. And so I am panicked, and I throw her in the car, and I dash to CVS, and I grab a bottle of Benadryl off the shelf. It was a Hitch moment, for those of you who remember. And she's down in this Benadryl, and afterwards someone said to me, why didn't you go for the EpiPen in the bag? And I use that to say, that's my example of, you have to keep these benefits and the toolkit that's available in front of people. Because when they're in crisis, they're not thinking about all those things. So you have to kind of ingrain it in their minds so that they understand. And it's an easy thing for them to reach into the toolkit for the things that they need. The other thing that the Y does is every employee of the Y has a free membership. And they are encouraged to go take care of their health. So it's one thing to have it, but then for leadership to use it and to openly talk about using it is another thing. So people understand, yeah, we really mean that we want you to have this benefit to take care of your health. And I try to be the primary example. Almost every morning, my husband would say every morning, I go to a YMCA and I'm on the pickleball court for nice. At least an hour and a half. And it's physical health, but it is more physical health. This is the only time of the day when my mind is totally clear. I'm not thinking about anything else but chasing that little plastic ball on the court. And you know what? I openly talk about it with my staff. They think it's because I love pickleball. It's because I really appreciate what getting your body moving and making a commitment to do something just for yourself. Just talking about that, it unleashes others. It encourages other people to to use what's at their disposal to take care of their health and feel like they don't have to apologize for it. So we have to be the examples of using these tools that we've made available, big or small, for our employees. They'll use them. They'll use them to take care of themselves.
Yeah, that's an interesting story too, because it does highlight the importance of having that information or the EpiPen and knowing, what's available, because, if it's when people are in a time of need, sometimes they're not always able to think so clearly in the moment and that sort of thing. One thing that's very important and vital is access to health care. Access to mental health care continues to be a challenge. Health workers, particularly the mental health providers, have been significantly impacted by the lingering effects of the pandemic. You combine that with a sharp increase in demand for their services. So what are some innovative ideas to help ensure employees and our community overall has access to mental health care? Gloria, would you want to take this first one? We'll continue with you.
Yeah, so at the Y, and this is something that has significantly grown during the pandemic, we have a Y Social Impact Center. And at this Impact Center, we offer therapeutic mental health therapy, behavioral health therapy for anyone in the community who needs it. And the number of therapists that we have on staff have increased by a factor of 4. We're now up to 100 mental health staff members, and our staff use it. Not all, some of our staff are part-time, and they may not have all of the benefits packages. Some of them just work an hour or two a week. They don't have all of those benefits packages, but they can take advantage of a social impact center like other members of the community. So we've realized that we had the ability to rise to the need in community. We're still not there, but we're continually increasing those resources, realizing that there's a need. We've also significantly increased the offerings through our benefits packages for our staff. But I go back to encouraging them to use it, making it okay if somebody needs to leave the office in the middle of the day to go take advantage of, to have their appointment. And also infusing the virtual component. I mean, that was a big help of the pandemic in a way, because before, in order for us to bill Medicaid for behavioral health sessions, it had to be in person. So now that can be done virtually. So that's been something that we've advocated for. We got a little bit of help from the pandemic, and fortunately that has not been reversed yet. Hopefully it will continue, and I hope my co-panelists will advocate with me in ensuring that that remains in place. Because what that access does is it gives people more options to find someone who has a shared experience to theirs. I will tell you, as a woman of color in Seattle, there aren't very many choices. And the ones who are here are absolutely phenomenal, but boy, are they booked out weeks and weeks and weeks out, like most therapists. But for example, my daughters, if they wanted therapy, some of them have to, make a call out to a therapist who's available out of state. Fortunately, we have that flexibility to find someone who has that lived experience, the cultural responsiveness that fits them. So I appreciate all those things that have come from the pandemic.
So at Regence, we recognize, right, supply and demand challenges. What we also know is that the majority of members still access behavioral health through their primary care doctor, which is interesting. You're more likely, you have a trusted relationship to say, hey, I'm feeling more stressed out about this. And even though we have a primary care shortage, we recognize that we need to help our primary care community by leaning in to provide more behavioral health and mental health resources to help them. So there's this new initiative called the Collaborative Care Model, which provides help and support to primary care practices, either with embedding a mental health specialist, whether or not that's a licensed social worker or a psychologist, to be able to help manage some of the behavioral health workload that is frequently put on the shoulders of primary care doctors. I will tell you, as a practicing internist for 30 years, 60% of my practice had some element of behavioral health in it. It's just, we try not to separate mental health from physical health, right? It's whole health. And when you're not feeling well, from a mental health standpoint, it absolutely affects your physical health. We know that from a stress standpoint. So that's one example of how we are leaning in to really help increase the supply side of things. The other thing is that frequently you just need a medication change, or you need, as a physician, just that curbside consult, as I like to say, hey, like, it's 6 months to get in to see the psychiatrist for the med change. What if I could just dial a doc, right? I could get on the phone with a psychiatrist or email them in a secure fashion to just say, do I need to change the med, or do I just need to up the dosage, right? And so we have that ability now through they're called e-consults, where we're creating that community with our specialists for them to practice at the top of their license and to amplify what they can do in the community so that members get served in a much more timely fashion. Those are a couple of those innovations. And then lastly, I would just say that from when we think of mental health, there are lots of different sub-buckets within it, whether or not it's eating disorders or substance abuse or OCD. And with this whole virtual movement, we have the ability now to be disruptive in the marketplace and say, well, maybe some of the old models that were there are maybe a little antiquated, and leaning into the new innovative models that are much more home-based with team support, peer support, are really disrupting the marketplace in a very positive way that we're seeing improved mental health outcomes as a result of.
Deanna, Adrian, thoughts? Deanna, I know your organization represents over 200, nearly 300. What are you seeing in terms of innovative ideas maybe that are coming up to help ensure that access to healthcare, particularly mental health care?
Well, I think that the access issue is real, right? And I think it's something that we all need to be thinking about from like a pipeline issue as well, and workforce development, and how are we working in partnership with our educational organizations as well as the public sector to do adequate funding for the jobs of the future that we do need, right? But I also think that, in many ways, the scarcity creates innovation, right? And so some of the online options that we're getting are really helpful in many ways, and they do allow you to access treatment more quickly when you need it. And I think especially for young people who really are so online right now, so if you've got teens, that sort of thing, it might be more comfortable for them to access online mental health care than it would be for them to take time off of school or out of sports and go in and see somebody in person. And I think one of the mental health stresses that a lot of us are dealing with is, frankly, an addiction to social media. And so we're all so online, we're hooked to our phones, and so many of us, maybe I'm going to speak for myself, you put the kids to bed, you've got some time, you're like, oh, finally some me time, but instead of doing something for you, you lay there and you look at your phone, and you're doom scrolling on Twitter, or you're looking at everybody who's on vacation but you on Instagram, right? And you're like, why am I not in Bali right now? What's going on, right? But maybe, what if instead of doing that, we looked at some of the apps that a lot of us now have for free through our insurance, right? So like if you look at your Calm app and you do a guided meditation instead of looking at Facebook tonight. What if you used your My Strength app to do a self-assessment about where you are in terms of your anxiety? And if you need it to use that as a jumping off point to get some help that maybe you didn't think about needing. So maybe those tools can really lead us to the help that we need. Or maybe we should just all put our phones down and read a book tonight instead. So,
as tech is sort of other than soccer. Tech is something that is really interesting to me, and something I follow. There are some really interesting things emerging, and one in particular, I think there are opportunities for mental health support in perhaps the metaverse or in a more anonymous way. I think it's Inner World. I don't know if anyone knows that, Inner World. And especially for kids, can potentially access mental health information and counseling in a more anonymous way. There are other cool apps that can monitor voice intonation and kind of maybe be an early trigger for mental health challenges. And so, again, I do think that technology is going to help. It's going to take time, and it still takes someone being willing to take that leap. The only other thing that I can mention relative to sports is that sports psychology, like that area of study and the amount of energy going into that is significant now. 10 years ago, it was all about optimizing the athletes. It was less about mental health, more about how do we get more out of the players. But that has sort of shifted, and again, for us, especially as we have a lot of young players in our system, and we need them to be healthy physically and mentally.
Well,
I had one more thought.
Well, yes,
if I
of
may.
course.
Yeah. So I agree with my co-panelists. More tools, more therapists, pipeline issue, more, the psychotherapy components through sports. But I just wanted to go back to a point I made earlier, because I think it's really, really important. And that is just us being there for one another. Having conversations. We're stopping to make more space just to check in with people. We have community conversations at our branches. And we're finding that people just come and gather and sit just so that they can connect with one another. So I just wanted to emphasize that there's something that we all can do. Yes, we need all these other pieces too, but there are things that we can do for one another. There's things that we can do for ourselves in just being connected and just caring for your neighbor, just showing kindness, just by showing that you see people. It will go a long way to help us address the mental health crisis that we're in.
That is so important. Very well said. Absolutely. We did touch a little bit earlier. We talked about kids a little bit. Another area that often affects our worker performance is our children's mental health, which has suffered greatly during the post-pandemic. Recent CDC data shows more than 40% of students felt sad or hopeless, and nearly 1/3 were in poor mental health. As leaders, what are you doing in your respective organizations or role to ensure that working parents have the resources they need to balance work and home and support their family's mental health care needs? Adrian, I'm going to stick with you for a minute and have you take this one first.
Sure. Yeah. I think I'll sort of divide it into two answers. One is sort of around our internal staff, and then maybe what we're doing externally. But we talk a lot at the Sounders about family. We try to base everything around family, whether we welcome a new ownership family into our organization, someone working again selling tickets, or someone on the soccer team. We try to welcome the family unit into the organization as opposed to just the individual. And that really is sort of becomes part of the culture and the ethos in our organization. We have shirts that say family on them. We want everyone to feel they're part of the Sounders family. Again, there are a lot of policies and things that we put in place to emphasize that, whether it's, moving away from holiday parties that were for, just the staff to, the entire family of the, everyone involved. Events we do, even for our fans, usually involve family. All of the youth programs that we do, all of the health, medical benefits, obviously supporting entire families through our benefits. Gender neutral leave for births of children. So everything sort of internally we try to do to focus on the family. And then, as it relates to what we're doing out in the community, maybe that's where our sweet spot is and a little more in our wheelhouse. We have something called the Rave Foundation. We're out building mini pitches in communities that are generally underserved or don't have opportunities. Our goal is for every child to be able to find an open place to play. So we've, I think, built 16 or 17 of those fields, opened one yesterday in New Holly, a neighborhood just off of Rainier in South Seattle. And again, to be there to see 150 kids running around, enjoying themselves, that may not be solving things for our staff and the children of our staff, but it's definitely solving for a bunch of people out there whose children need to be served. The other big thing that we are leaning into. We have a partnership with Providence Healthcare, and we've partnered with the Renton School District. Both of us are based there now, and as a jumping off point, are leaning into mental health in the Renton School District. We've worked with them to create a framework that we didn't want to come in and just sort of dictate what would work, but we've created a framework that's sort of multiple levels of a pyramid. The goal is to expose every kid in the Renton School District to a conversation about mental health, to begin those conversations about awareness. So that should be every child. At sort of the next level, there will probably be 5 to 10% of kids that perhaps get pushed into a pool that leads to more peer group conversation, working with sounders. Maybe it's physical activity. Maybe it's our players working with individual kids or groups, and then ultimately the top of the pyramid, or maybe you would call it the bottom of the pyramid, leads to one-on-one help, potentially medical advice. But our goal is to start there and see if we can, affect an entire school district, and try to do our part as the Sounders to, begin to make a dent on this, and having these conversations and destigmatizing, and hopefully it can become a model that we roll out across other school districts.
Yeah, that's a great program, and that you all are doing that. At the Y, this is front and center for you all. What would you like to share about?
Yes, I applaud what the Sounders in Providence and the Renton School District are doing. We need that activity everywhere. Why? We got to get kids moving. It's important to get kids moving. And in the process, you have an opening to also see what's going on up here, and to impact how they're faring from a mental health perspective. So we are doubling down on sports. I was just sharing with Adrian that one thing that the Y just announced is this national collaboration with the U.S. Soccer Foundation, with the goal of improving health outcomes of young people, 1 million young people, as we approach the Men's World Cup in 2026, the small event that's going to be coming. But it's our opportunity to really get kids moving. But it's about the kids. But the way that we affect change and meet needs of kids is through the whole family. You can drive or have an impact on kids if you can step in and influence the behaviors of the whole family. A lot of young people are stressed because they're worried about their parents. And we saw that so clearly during the pandemic. And so if we can get the whole family engaged in activities, then we can have the maximal impact on that young person. Every program that we offer now has infused in it social emotional learning, teaching resiliency, self-awareness, right? All of those basic skills, coping skills that young people need. And so that's across the board, whether it's swim lessons, whether it's going to camp. And I want to get to the outdoors part in just a second. It's so important to do that for our young people, whether it's before and after school care. We have significantly expanded our child care since the beginning of the pandemic, because a lot of child care operations went away, never to return. And so there is a real deficit of availability of child care. So we've opened 4 early education centers over the last year. We have more on the drawing board next year. That will reduce some of the stress on families, and that will give us an opportunity to really engage with the young people who come into our centers, to teach them that to provide that social emotional learning, to help them be kindergarten ready. All of those things are so important. So yes, we are there for kids, and we care about their mental health, and we love engaging with partners. So if anyone wants to work with the Y to do more for our young people, please hit me up.
Great. Deanna, when you look at assistance for working parents, what are you all doing and what are you seeing?
You know, I think a big way that we can be better serving the needs of our employees who are parents are having more people in leadership who are parents. And I am a single mom. I'm a single mom of a 5-year-old. And so I feel like it's incumbent upon me to lean into the privilege that I have in that role of CEO and advocate for others, because childcare is broken right now, right? And when schools get out at 3 in the afternoon and you have to work till 5 and there is no aftercare in half the schools in this area, right? It's impossible, right? And it does put that stress on our parents. And I know that when we as parents are stressed, our kids get stressed. And they feel it, they pick up on those types of things. And so I think when we need to advocate for the policies and the programs that are good for our employees, and we need more people in those roles who get those things. You know, when I was first hired as CEO, I'm the first CEO woman in the history of our organization, I was invited to a workshop of other people in my role across the country, and they said, this is a family-friendly event, bring your family. And I said, awesome, tell me about the childcare options that there will be at this workshop. And they said, oh no, there's no childcare. And I was like, well, how's that family friendly, right? You know, and I'm like, they're well, like, bring your partner. I'm like, well, I am not a partnered person, right? And so many of our employees are not, right? And so if we're only building models for old traditions, we're not meeting the needs of all our employees. And so understanding what those needs are and making workplaces that are truly family friendly, and not just family friendly for people who have a stay-at-home partner to take care of those kids, I think that's a huge part of what we can be doing and advocating for. And also, before I forget, I want to put in a big plug, because one of the things that I have done for my mental health this week is I went to family camp at YMCA's Camp Coleman last weekend with my 5-year-old.
Nice.
And it's awesome. And if you haven't been to this thing, it is the coolest thing in the world. So you can go and do all the fun things you did at camp, but do them with your kids. And it's amazing. And the Y is awesome. And I'm so excited to be here with you, Lori.
And somebody else cooks for you.
Somebody else cooks for you all weekend. It's amazing.
That's very important. Dr. Milovitz, we'll give you the last word on this.
Yeah, so, you know, the CDC came out with a study on adolescent mental health, and 57% of girls in the last 30 days have contemplated suicide. Oh 42% of boys contemplated suicide. Like, that statistic is sobering on so many levels. So I would say at Regence, you know, clearly we think about child and adolescent mental health all the time. We have resources, whether it's in the virtual space and app-based, right, which they're very tech savvy. My kids are my tech support. That, you know, they interface better. The idea of, you know, talking to parents about looking for the danger signals in their kids. So I will say to all of you who are parents out there in the audience today, check in with your kid. Ask them the hard question of, like, really, like, how are you doing today? Have you thought about harming yourself at all in the last few days? And can we talk about that? You know, when I trained, you know, back in the sort of the dark ages, we were not encouraged to ask about suicide and suicide risk. Sort of shocking, right? But if you don't ask the question, you never actually get the answer. So I will challenge all of us in this room to say, ask the question, like, really, how are you doing? And fine isn't a great answer, right? Mm-hmm. Even though your teenagers are single answer people at that stage. So I will say, ask questions, be super curious, know that there are resources available. For those of you who may not know about 988, it is a resource that's out there, that's a crisis line, that's immediate intervention. We have programs that can do next day, same day therapy at Regence for our health plan members, and they are, you know, geared towards not only kids but also adults. And and they are our future at the end of the day. Cambia Foundation has leaned into resilience families, working with adverse childhood events to really start to amplify this idea of resilience. And I think that that's really important because similar to all of us in the room, our kids have been through the same challenges through this pandemic that's been really unprecedented. So I encourage all of us to lean in, to be kind to each other. I love what you said about sort of sharing that and the power of the physical touch. So a hug goes a really long way.
Yes. Well, we could continue on for quite a while. This is such an important topic. We are out of time, though. I very much appreciate each of you sharing time out today and sharing your insights and expertise. I have learned a lot, Adrian. Hopefully you have as well.
For sure. Yeah.
And thank you all for coming out today and being here to try to learn and to support this. Thank you to Cambia and Regence for partnering with us again on this program. It's so important. Please give a round of applause to our speakers today. Thank you. Thank you very much. And please have a great rest of your day.